This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. It is I, Old Gingerface, here with you once again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for checking out the podcast and finding it. Thank you for the binge listening that happens. I really appreciate that. Thank you for all the reviews that I get. That is awesome. Don't forget also, Cops in the News is a live show that we do twice a month. You can go to the website, thingspolicey.com, and join the mailing list. You can watch them, and then the replays are one out of the two is on. Thank you, my sweet love. My wife brought me some coffee. And then the second one of the month is Patreon only. So all that to say, I love you guys, and thank you for being here. Very exciting episode. Been waiting a while to get this guy on. Very busy man, has his own things going on, has his own podcast, has a massive career he had with the DEA. He started 6 years in a small town in West Virginia, 6 years as a railroad copper, and then did 26 years with the DEA as a special agent, and was involved in the capture of Pablo Escobar with his partner Javier Pena. Without further ado, let me bring on the great Steve Murphy. Steve!
Steve, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you. All the good comments. Just tell me where to send the check and I'll send it.
All right, brother. Thank you for coming on. But I'm glad we finally got it, the date pinned down and we could do it. Pretty common, as you know, as your podcast, Game of Crimes, scheduling people, and a lot of us have a lot of stuff going on. So it's nice to finally be able to get you here.
It's an honor to be here with you. I was checking you out here recently, and you've got a pretty storied career as well. Your story's probably better than mine.
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm more had like a midlife wanderlust crisis. Moved to California, then moved back, and I don't regret any of it. But I am happy to be back in Mass here with the fine men and women of law enforcement like you on the podcast. I didn't know this about you, but of course I did a little bit digging when you were going to come on, and I saw that you were a small town cop in West Virginia, which I don't know. When I hear DEA, I always assume, especially someone who makes the big cases and stuff, I'm like, I'll probably went right in as DEA or did like a short stint and then was like, I want to be DEA. I got to get out of this cop job. But not you. You did 12 years in police work first. So West Virginia, was it a tiny town or?
Yeah, it was the town of Bluefields, the very southern tip of West Virginia. There's actually a Bluefield, Virginia, that's a sister city there. I think back then, maybe 22,000 people. So we had a 35-man department. Honestly, maybe 1-2 murders a year. Some years, no murders, So I think the biggest challenge in that department, though, was a lot of hillbillies would come out of the mountains on the weekends.
Yeah.
And
Everybody's got a gun.
Yeah, a gun, and they like to drink, and when they're drinking, they like to fight. So that was the big thing back then. And unfortunately, I've got a lot of arthritis now in hands and different parts of my bodies because of all that. But you know what? When you're a young guy, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And did you like have a one-track mind for police work when you started? Like, I'm just going to be a cop and do a career, and then kind of got enticed to DEA, or your interest in it grew? How did it work out?
Well, since I was a little kid, all I ever wanted to do was be a cop. It's not like I come from a police family. My dad was a Southern Baptist minister. My mom was a bookkeeper.
Nice.
Most of my grandparents were coal miners, the men in the family. My cousins and I, the male cousins, were first generation non-coal miners. So, I got in trouble with the cops when I was about 10 years old down in Tennessee, and camping out one night trying to break in the house and got caught. And they said, "Well, Murph, they said, boys, you got a decision to make tonight. You can either go with us and spend the rest of your lives in prison, or we can take you home to your parents." And we looked at each other and said, "Take us to jail." Of course, they took us home.
Right. Yeah. That's great. And when you then you transitioned to train cop, did you just get an interest in that, or was it a better pay, or what was the deal there?
My pay almost doubled. So as a city cop, I started out at $9,600 a year in 1975. I was working all the off-duty jobs I could get. I was working all the overtime I could get. I got the local state college. I got their sports contract for basketball. Worked for one of the firemen as an electrician's helper. Even sold Amway,
Wow.
just trying to make ends meet. And here comes the railroad, and it doubled my pay. I had to move to Norfolk, Virginia, so I actually lived down in Virginia Beach, which is always good.
Yeah, that's not
But
bad.
honestly, it was about the money at that point.
Okay. And how did the railroad work there? Was it state regulated or federal or was it private?
The railroads are federally regulated, but so I started out with Norfolk and Western Railroad, and then they were purchased by Southern, or they merged. And then now it's known as Norfolk Southern Railroad. And in my first couple years, I was a glorified security guard sitting on the end of a pier down in downtown Norfolk, where they loaded the coal ships. But you had, billion-dollar equipment on there, so they wanted a full-time guard down there, basically. So, but
Oh my
gosh, checked people coming in and out and got paid pretty well for it, but
yeah.
I hated it so
Oh, I bet. Yeah, boring. Yeah, we just had last month or 2 months ago, we had a train derail in one of our towns, and I was on duty, first one there, and, honestly, don't know much of anything about trains, train police. Like, I've been on Amtrak before and Amtrak police, and then so in my mind, I'm first of all, I'm going there, going code, and I'm like, in my mind, you're trying to get things sorted, like, what are you gonna do when you get there? And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, like, a train I never thought in my wildest dreams in my career I'd go to a train derailment, you know? So, I'm
Sure.
thinking, like, who the hell has authority on these tracks? And I know ultimately the federal government does, but a lot of these regional train companies they contract police or they have their own police. And
Mhm.
but so I have no idea. I get there. Luckily, it was a cargo train, so the engineers were fine, and there was like 10 or 14 tracks up. But one was blocking the road, and it was pretty crazy. But then I'm dealing with dispatch, trying to be like, who is once the scene's safe and all that. I'm like, well, I need somebody to respond to book a train accident, like to obviously I'm going to do a report, but they got to have an investigator who comes down here, and they finally get dispatched on the phone, and they're like, well, we don't. This company that took over these rails doesn't contract a police department. And I'm like, all right, and there's no loss of life or limb or even really not much property damage. They hit a telephone pole, so feds aren't coming.
Yeah.
So I go, well, I don't have a book for booking train accidents. I'm like, all right. So I talked to the state police DOT. I think, okay, maybe the DOT. They do have certified train cops. They're not going to do it. So finally, what happened was the company themselves, the general manager and the assistant general manager showed up, and I go, who is documenting, who's booking this train accident? And they said, we are. I said, okay, so the company itself is going to book its own train accident. He's like, yeah. Well, okay,
Okay.
go for it, man. It was so weird.
Their priorities are getting that, those wrecked cars back on the rails because it's blocking the train, it's
Right,
blocking a few other trains from coming through, so there's not a lot of concern about law enforcement, to be
right.
quite honest with you. You're dealing with corporate America, that's what it is. I'm
Yeah, and
I'm not ditching railroad cops because they do a fantastic job, but that's the truth.
yeah, and they don't know what's crazy. I sent a patrolman out to the engineers to check on them and to get their IDs. Refused to give their driver's licenses.
Really?
Company policy. They gave their railroad licenses, but would not give their IDs. And I ended up calling them and asking what's going on. And they said, well, in the past, we've had derailments like this or accidents. And when the engineers gave their licenses, it impacted their private automobile insurance.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you wrecked a train.
Yep. They said the company's policy is now engineers do not give their identification for wreck-related things to the police.
Wow.
And I
I
was
never
like,
heard that.
and I didn't know of any law off the top of my head that said they had to. I had never dealt with the train. So I'm like, all right, give me your name and date of birth. I can look your license up. It's not a big deal. But
Exactly.
I thought that was so weird. Anyways, it's a dumb train story, and I got a great guest on here. I'm blabbing about a stupid train accident. Um, Steve, can you take us way back to when you were a young copper, just starting out, the first time you were called, the first like hot call you went to, the first call you had an adrenaline dump on?
Oh, it wasn't a call. I'm riding with a training officer, a guy named Tom Mustard, who was eventually killed in a car wreck. Tom's one of the gruffest guys you'd ever meet, former military, it was not unusual for him to get out on a call with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And
Nice.
he was a
Classic.
tough guy. He was a tough guy, though. He would clean your clock in a heartbeat. And this is back in the mid-'70s, so it's a little bit different than it is today.
Mustache?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you always had the porn star. I still got the porn star mustache,
Absolutely. Law enforcement partner right there.
That's it. But, so he finally lets me drive one night, because I'm fresh out of the State Police Academy and all that, I don't know, it's probably 2:00 in the morning. He and I were working a 7 to 3 shift, so we were gonna get off at 3 AM. And we're going down this residential street, and this Cadillac's coming at us head on, and there's no other cars. It's like 3 cars out there, and we're following a car. Well, this Cadillac comes over and sideswipes the car in front of us, then comes after me, and I run up on the sidewalk and then keeps driving. So, boy, I whipped that car around, and, Tom's like, "Turn around and go get that person." He's not excited at all, and I am, rookie in charge here, I'm behind the wheel. Do the U-turn. I'm spinning tires and raising smoke and throwing gravels everywhere and chase this person down. Finally get him to pull over, and it was this older lady driving, all dressed up, had a fur coat on and jewelry and all that. And long story short, turns out she was the wife of one of the principal members of the leading law firm in our city. So, and they were a lot of civil, but also a lot of criminal litigators in there as well. And it just so happened her brother-in-law was a district court judge in our county. So I bring her in the station. Tom's like, "Rookie, you got this one." And it just leaves me. So she refuses to take a breathalyzer, which is automatic revocation of your driver's license for you, or West Virginia back at that time. And so we're processing her, and the next thing I know, here comes the chief of police at 3:00 in the morning.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Mr. Murphy, do you know who you have here?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna mention her name because I'm not gonna embarrass her. She's probably passed away by now anyway. But he said, "This is who her family is." Like, okay, then
Yeah.
what makes them different than me? Except they got a whole lot more money. But so then anyway, charge her. They release her on a personal recognizance bond. Somebody comes up and picks her up and takes her home. Go to city court on these charges, and I've charged her with DUI. And in the meantime, a couple of sergeants came to me, and there's like, "Hey, her husband's law firm hires us off duty to serve papers.
Oh, boy.
Could you see your way clear to maybe reduce some charges here?" And I'm a rookie. I'm still learning that, and I was very immature at that age. I'm 19 years old probably, but I had learned to listen to the older guys. And I said, "Sure, guys, whatever you need. You tell me what to do here. I'll do it." And they're like, "Well, drop it to reckless and drunk in public." Okay. So I go to city court. She doesn't even show up, and one of the members of the law firm shows up to represent her. And our city judge is like, "Mr. Murphy, you going to represent yourself today?" And because the city prosecutor didn't show up. Usually the chief sits in and he didn't show up.
Oh, man.
And I'm thinking, just bend over and take it now,
Hanging you out to dry.
So he says, "Well, what do you want to do here?" And I said, "Well, Your Honor, before we get started, if I could, I'd like to reduce the charges to reckless driving and public intoxication." He's like, "You can't do that. You charge this individual. You've got to pursue your case," and like, okay, I tried. So I present all my evidence just like I told you. And when I finish, the judge looks over at the defense attorney, and his first name was Norris. He goes, "Well, Norris, what do you think? I don't think there's enough evidence to convict anybody here." And of course the attorney realizes, he's kind of embarrassed because of the way the judge is acting. And he says, "I think we'll reduce these charges to reckless driving and public intoxication." And I'm going, WTF? And there was a detective in there that was sitting in for the chief. Roger was in there, and he's just shaking his head. He's looking at me, and I've got this dumbfounded look on my face, and he's just snickering. And then the judge is like, "Oh, well, Norris, let me introduce you. This is Officer Murphy. He's one of our newer guys here. Got a great future ahead of him here in the police department, working for the city of Bluefield, West Virginia." And the whole time I'm thinking, I can't even sit down. That one hurt when you shoved it up in there,
Yeah.
So that was kind of my introduction to small town police work.
And talk about good old boy network right there, huh?
Oh my goodness. You always heard about it. And I used to read all kinds of police books, Serpico and all those different books, were out, what was the choir boys or choir practice, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Those were Wamball wrote. And then this happens to you. I mean, it's very disillusioning at that point.
Yeah, that sucks. Takes the wind right out of your sails, especially when you're new. And I mean, and that stuff still does go on. They're just a lot better at it now. They don't talk about it in open court really. They just
Yeah.
cases disappear or what, as long as they're minor,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that sucks. Just leaving you there. 19 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, it continued throughout my career. So, there's a couple more instances where you think you're going to do something, and I mean, we've even had a couple cases where the White House called and said, "No, you're not."
Oh, wow.
So that was later in my career with DEA.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I've had guys on recently that talked to me after we were done recording, and obviously I can't tell you any details, but real shady stuff having to do with like executive officers of the FBI and kind of putting their neck on people, even threatening cops, you know, like through back chains, like threatening them and their families, and pretty scary and gross, gross stuff like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kind of the way I always feel bad for the FBI guys, man, because there's so many good FBI agents out there, and they'll be the first to tell you that it's the Washington part is the poison, the Washington office is.
Yep. There's as a city cop, I've had 3 different instances in 6 years where people filed complaints against me for, they start a fight with you and then they want to complain because you kicked their butt.
Right.
And they file civil rights violations against you with the Bureau. And I agree with you. The Bureau, we all, every cop in the United States picks on the Bureau. It's just this, it's a good natured competition. They'll pick right back on you. They don't lay down, just take it. But occasionally you run into some jerks. But, in DEA, every agency I've dealt with, there's jerks. But there was one where they wanted to question me and they had to come out of Charleston down to Bluefield, which is, it's about 100 miles. And I said, listen, I'm going to be in a training class at the West Virginia State Police Academy. Why don't you just come over and have lunch and I'll treat you guys to lunch and I'll answer all your questions. So, they did not show up. I'm like, okay. So they waited till the end of the week and we're outside. I don't even remember what this training class was, but I'm with 50 cops from around the state local guys. And you see these two suits show up in the parking lot. Everybody goes, "Oh, there's the feds." And they walk over to the commandant's office. Next thing you know, here comes the commandant with them walking out to our group. And like, "Murph, come here a minute. Guys need to talk to you." I said, "No, you know how we are." Everybody going, "Oh, Murph's going to town. They're gonna come."
Well, everybody loved it.
And so I walked over, and that was the 2 FBI agents come to talk to me. I'm like, "Well, I was expecting you guys on Tuesday. I was gonna treat you to lunch." And they're like, "Well, we got busy." I said, "So your solution to that was come out here and embarrass me in front of police officers from all over the state of West Virginia,
Yeah.
rather than coming and meeting me privately so we could discuss this." "Oh, don't be like that. We'll have to put you down as uncooperative." "You put me down any way you want to there, jackass." And they were like, "Were you gonna make a statement?" I said, "You got a copy of my report?" They said, "Oh, yeah, we got it." I said, "I stand on my report. See ya."
Yeah. Smart.
So, but that's, you tell the story, and that's certainly not an indictment of the entire bureau, because I've got some fantastic friends on there, guys that, I'd stand toe to toe with and go in the door with them. So it's, just we always run into some jerks, don't we?
Yep, it's true, and that's the smart thing to do too, and any police union will tell you that. If you've done a report and someone else is investigating your incident, keep your mouth shut. You don't talk,
Yep.
Because all you can do is contradict the report you wrote by mistake. You can give some little detail and they'll go, "Well, and, you gave this other statement." You know what I mean? It's nothing good it's not gonna help you. It's just not gonna help you.
Oh,
Well,
but
that's
it's all in the past. It's all in the past.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Steve, can you describe a strange or, really bizarre thing you've dealt with in your career in law enforcement?
Just one.
Oh, let
30
it rip, brother.
38 years. Um, well, I think this is a little strange because I really didn't know what DEA was when I joined it. But 12 years of law enforcement, the largest amount of cocaine, powder cocaine I'd ever seen in my life was 2 ounces. So we're talking a baggie, about like that.
Yep.
My first undercover, I get to Miami in 1987. In 1988, go undercover with a couple of DEA guys on a 53-foot Hatter sport fisherman yacht. We go to the Turks and Caicos Islands, which, quite honestly, I've never even heard of. Um,
Nice.
we get down there, and we've got 2 pilots that fly in from Cuba that are going, and I'm the new guy. I'm the gopher. I'm not a case agent. I'm working with a senior agent on all this. And they land in Providenciales. They come down to the end of the runway. They turn around. The back door opens. We're over there with some other other undercover Provo cops, and they start throwing these green duffel bags out. And when they get it finished, they close the door. They go up. They refuel, take off, and go back to Cuba. So that was 400 kilos of cocaine. So I went from 2 ounces to 880 pounds of coke. And you know what, Steve? I was addicted to cocaine at that point, just a different way. That was the most bizarre. I couldn't even fathom that there was that much cocaine in the world at one time. I mean, this is how naive I was hitting Miami in the late 80s.
Yeah.
But it was a blast. That case was, my senior partner worked that case to prove that the Castro brothers were allowing Cuba to be used as a transshipment point for cocaine coming out of Colombia into South Florida. They had, on our way over, we hit a submerged reef and bent one of the props on the boat. So we limped into Nassau. DEA Air Wing flew a prop over from Miami. They made a phone call, and the U.S. Navy sent a subtender to Nassau, then sent 2 divers over and replaced the prop on our boat. We had Air Force AWACS plane up, radar plane, tracking that plane coming out of Cuba to Provo and then tracking back into Cuba. And here's this small town country cop, and I'll be the first to tell you, I'm a redneck hillbilly. I'm fine with it. I know what I am, right?
I like it.
But I'm thinking, we can control the Navy and the Air Force and these sovereign nations to come out and do what we'd ask them to do. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was hooked. That's what it was. I was just hooked, and I never looked back. The next 26 years was just a blast and a blur.
That's incredible, especially the 80s with all the drugs.
Oh my gosh. If you couldn't make a drug case in South Florida then, you need to find a different occupation, because it was literally falling out of the skies and washing up on the beach.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, I'd feel the same way. I mean, I've only ever seen street level amounts of drugs. If I saw a pallet full of cocaine, I would be like blown away. This is insane.
I mean, so there was a story that precedes that where I was going with my senior partner. His name was Gene Franco. I call him Gino. So Gino and I are going to meet these 2 informants, and I'm thinking, and I haven't been on the job now, but maybe 2 months out of the academy. And, he says, all right, come on, we're going to go meet these guys. So we called him Cheech and Chong. It was an old white guy and an old Asian guy. And so I'm going out to Gene's car, and I think, man, he's got, wonder what kind of fancy sports car he's got. Yeah. We get this old ass Oldsmobile. It's broken down. I mean, he had to move clothes out of the front seat so I could have a place to sit. And I'm thinking, well, I guess, okay, I guess we got to blend in. So are we going to the Intercontinental Hotel, or where are we meeting these guys? We're going to Denny's on 36th Street over next to the airport, brother. Like, okay. So now I've never met these 2 informants, so we're sitting there and waiting. And, typical informants are always late. And finally, these 2 old guys come walking up, and I just kind of eye them, and I'm watching them in my peripheral vision because I don't know who they are. And they're going to sit down. I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? You're looking at them, and that was Cheech and Chong. And I'm like, okay, you got to be kidding me now. These 2 old farts are high-speed, low-drag cocaine informants for the DEA? And so initially they were talking about 500 kilos. Gino and I get in the car to leave, and we're on the way back to the office, and he says, Murph, what do you think? And I started laughing. I said, man, those guys are full of crap, aren't they, Gino? He said, why do you say that? I said, they're talking about 500 kilos. There's not that much cocaine in the world, is there? And he hits the brakes, looks over at me. He's like, where are you from? So it was extremely naive going into that situation, but just fell in love with it and had a blast. I'm not kidding, just had a blast in my whole career.
ProForce Law Enforcement, the best damn cop shop in the nation. Whether you are purchasing for an entire agency or an individual officer looking to buy firearms or duty gear, these guys are the best in the biz. With law enforcement exclusive pricing, ProForce Law Enforcement is a place you want to be buying your guns and duty gear. They carry all the top industry brands, and the guys and gals that work there understand exactly what law enforcement officers need. As a listener of this show, you get access to exclusive pricing on the gear you depend on every day. Visit tps.proforceonline.com for special deals on optics, duty gear, and tactical accessories that aren't available anywhere else. Really, really good deals on this. The link for that will be in the show notes. You can also visit their showroom in Prescott, Arizona, or store in Brea, California to get hands-on with the gear, or shop nationwide at proforceonline.com. Their dedicated law enforcement support team is always ready at 1-800-367-5855. Thank you, ProForce. That's awesome, man. When you transitioned from being a cop to DEA, what made you bite on it?
Well, as a railroad cop, there was a new cop came in, new railroad cop, Pete Ramey, one of my dearest friends and still is, big man, big mountain of a man. It was a Virginia state trooper, had worked on the DEA task force out of Roanoke, Virginia. And he would every once in a while, at least once a week, he and I would get together and just ride around. He might stay over late after his shift when I was relieving him, and we'd ride around for a few hours and just talk. And during that time, I'm back in Bluefield, and this is where I'd been a cop, so I still know all the cops there. You know, we're all close friends, and we're going and getting coffee in the middle of the night and things like that. And I'm out at the main building there in Bluefield for the railroad, and I hear gunshots just a couple blocks away. And you know, being the nosy people we are, I had to go investigate. And there's a police officer on the street exchanging gunshots with a guy in the third floor building. So that guy's got the high ground on him, shooting down on the cop. And there's a guy laying on the sidewalk that's already been shot. So I make my way over to the cop and, you know, hey man, what's going on? And he's like, well, that guy up there shot that guy down there. And when I'm trying to get him to surrender, because he keeps trying to kill that guy because he's laying on the sidewalk, but he's still alive. He said, yeah, every time he comes to the window, I shoot at him, he shoots back at me. And I said, okay, you got help on the way? And he's like, oh shit. He hadn't even called for backup yet.
Oh yeah, tunnel rookie.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, you know, get help on the way. I'm going to go drag that guy in a recessed doorway. So I ran over, and because this guy he was shooting a 44 Magnum down. And what happened?
Oh my gosh.
Is this guy up here in the apartment came home and caught this guy in bed with his wife. So as this guy's running out, this guy shoots him in the butt. So, you know,
The 44 Magnum. Oh,
yeah.
jeez.
You know, you can't make this stuff up, right? So, anyway, we exchanged gunshots and all that, and finally the guy surrenders. Nobody got hit other than the guy that was in bed with the wife. So, killed that building dead in hell, but, you know, we didn't hit any bodies. And so, the next morning, I help him process the crime scene and witness statements and all that stuff. And the next morning, it's a Sunday morning, I called my chief about 6:30 and reported I was in a shooting. And he just comes unglued. He's like, how did you got involved in a shooting? What happened? And I said, well, you know, the police got in the shooting. I went and backed them up. Boy, he got ticked. He's like, you stay right there. I'm on my way. And I'm like,
You were a railroad cop at the time.
yeah.
Okay.
But I've got statewide jurisdiction in West Virginia and Virginia is the way it worked. So he comes in and he is just madder than a wet hen, man. He is chewing me out. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, what are you talking about? A police officer needed help, and I went to help him.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with railroad business. You opened us up to liability and all this other stuff. And
Gross.
really ticked me off. And he's like, give me your weapon. So at that time, I had a little snub-nosed Smith & Wesson Model 15 revolver. So I pulled my weapon out and unloaded it and handed it to him. He's like, I can't believe you unloaded the weapon. I'm like, Chief, you never had a loaded weapon to anybody. That's basic firearms 101, you know? He's like, well, how many rounds did you shoot? How am I going to know? And I said, do you think I shot rounds and then didn't reload? I'm walking around with an empty gun. So he said, where's those rounds at? And I said, they're in my pocket. You know, so I pulled the casings out and gave them to him. And it went on for about an hour. And finally he said, listen, he said, I'm going to get your job over this. You have business going up there. I said, Chief, I'm the only railroad cop on duty for 26 counties. When I need help, who do I call?
Yeah.
Guys. So he's like, get out of here. And I said, hey, before I go, just so you know, given the same set of circumstances, I will respond the same way. See ya.
Good for you.
So he tried to get me fired. Luckily, the higher-ups in the railroad police had been police officers because our chief had never been a real cop. City gave me a commendation, big deal. You know, he's on the news, the TV station, and the local newspaper, and all that. So, but I thought, you know, if they're not going to do anything, and that's his reaction, I can't work for somebody like this.
Yeah.
So, um, that's when Pete started telling me about DEA, and I just got in. I've always been interested in narcotics cases, so um, I decided, well, you know what? If they're not going to do anything to him, I'm not going to stay with this job. So I finished my college degree. Took me 11 years to get that 4-year piece of paper. I'm a little slow learner, but got my degree and applied for DEA, and never looked back.
Good for you, man. Wow, I mean, talk about having a whole career before your DEA career.
Yeah, it was this. The sad thing is, those 12 years, none of that applied towards retirement.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
The feds retire earlier though, right? Or you can get more money sooner or
Well, if you can retire after 25 years at any age in federal law enforcement, or you can retire at 20 years. How'd that go? 20 years at age 50?
what's the percentage they give you at 25?
It was, let's see, you get 2% per year of your base pay for the first 20 years, and then 1% for any years over 20. And then if you've got medical time left, medical leave, they'll buy that back from you also. And it applied. So I got an extra 1% out of that. So what's that, 20? It's 40, 46, 47% of my base pay.
Oh, wow. I thought it would be better than that.
Well, it's a three-pronged thing because you have to pay into the thrift savings plan, which is like a government 401k. And then you also qualify for Social Security because you have to pay in Social Security.
Oh, you
So
do?
yeah. So when I take my retirement check and my Social Security check, those two together are
Oh, wow.
plenty of money. That's plenty of money for my wife and I to live on. And then, your 401k, just I've got it in investments. We try to never touch that.
Wow, I didn't know that's really, really interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, because for all of us law enforcement on the state and county and local level, we don't pay into Social Security, but I guess federal employees, they make you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
changes the whole retirement, idea then.
It does. And that's why, when Washington starts talking about doing something with Social Security, you start getting antsy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you. Jeez. Yeah, I think we get after 32 years, we get 80%, but, you really gotta be because they don't count overtime or detail like side jobs, so
Hmm.
you either need to work at a place that pays really well or be like a lieutenant or chief or, something up high up there to get, like a livable salary or be diligent and have your house paid off and all that, but who wants to do that? That's no fun. I got money. I gotta spend money other places, podcast
Yep.
equipment. Um,
There you go.
Steve, so fascinating early career. You switch over to the DEA, and of course, the whole Pablo Escobar Medellin case is incredible. I'll be honest with you. I don't. I know my knowledge of it is cursory. It's what everybody else knows. I'm not. I haven't gone deep on it. I know a lot of people have a lot of like intimate knowledge about it, but I think it would be good for this interview not to over investigate it because a lot of people, it is famous, but a lot of people that are going to listen to this only know what I know. So,
Mhm.
can you just tell us a little bit about Pablo Escobar and what he was doing and about the man himself? Because, like we were talking beforehand, I've read about just some Wikipedia stuff about him, and I've seen the Narcos and Netflix and your project there, and even like in the Entourage, that HBO series, they had he was the main star that was playing Pablo Escobar in Medellin, a movie they were making. So it's
Mhm.
in the culture; people know about it.
Right.
But to me, you see Pablo Escobar, and you just think automatically it has to be a maniacal bad guy because these drug lords are psychotic. But then he did other stuff, like he built schools and donated money, and like was that just him being smart? Because because you're psychotic doesn't mean you're stupid. He wants local support because that will protect him, and it did protect him when they went to come get him. He built his own prison and lived it and escaped it and all that. So all that to say, can you just give us like an overview of Pablo Escobar, what he was doing, and how you got involved?
So this guy excuse me, started out as stealing hubcaps and gravestones out of cemeteries, and then they'd sandblast the names off and resell them. So he's a petty criminal. He eventually gets involved in a drug deal where a guy just needs help, a guy named Restrepo, and I think it was 17 kilos or something. This is back in the 80s. He goes and helps him and realizes how much money he can make off of this. So he goes and kills Restrepo. Well, Pablo has no remorse, no guilt feelings. He doesn't have a conscience.
Yeah.
So he really got into the cocaine business, smuggling coca paste or coca leaves coming in from Bolivia and Peru into Colombia, and he was doing black market things as well. He's making a buck anywhere he could. Once he realized how much money he could potentially make out of that, and he realized that, hey, the gringos up in the United States will pay big bucks for this. This is where he really started to grow. And the reason that people would not mess with him is because he would kill them. That kind of sends a message. That's a different business profile, right?
Kind of like
Pablo
Whitey
guys
Bulger,
just
just extreme violence.
exactly. So what that led to is Pablo became the world's first narco terrorist. And a narco terrorist basically is just a narcotics trafficker who employs terroristic activities in his illegal business. So he became the world's most wanted fugitive. He built his business up that he was responsible for as much as 80% of the world's cocaine.
Damn.
I mean, think about that, Steve. I mean, you and I both had side hustles as cops. Wouldn't you like to have 80% of whatever your side hustle is?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
you wouldn't
He
have to
must
be a
have been
cop then, would you?
no, he must have been one of the richest men in the world at that time.
He is still the richest drug trafficker that's ever been, with an estimated wealth as high as $30 billion.
Whew.
And in comparison, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the Mexican,
Yep.
his estimated wealth was $4 billion, and Pablo's $30 billion. So it's a huge difference there. So he always represented himself to be a man of the people. They wanted to represent the poor people because he did grow up very poor. His dad was a dirt farmer. His mom was a school teacher. And as he gained this wealth, he needed an army to protect him because the Cali cartel was ticked off at him. Everybody's ticked off at Pablo because he was getting too big, and the government was mad at him. So he hired as many as 500 sicarios to protect him. So he's got his own little army there, right?
What's a sicario?
It's an assassin. It's just a Spanish word for assassin, for
Okay.
a murderer. So that's his protectors. And let me tell you, he'll sacrifice them in a heartbeat to save himself.
Oh,
And so as these sicarios are dying off, he would go into these poor communities and he would build communas. He would build housing, apartments and let people live in them for free. Had electricity, had running water, had a lock on the door. These are people who were living on the edge of a trash dump. So you know what their opinion of him is going to be. This is our savior, right?
yeah, they love him.
And he built medical clinics. He built soccer fields. He would give money away. He'd give food away. All good things. But when he needed replacements for the sicarios that had died for him, where do you think he went?
Yeah.
Right back in those poor communities. And here's the sad part of that whole thing is he might go in and, I mean, he'd put the word out. All these young people would show up and he would hug them and kiss them and, and he's got his sicarios giving money out and all that stuff. And he'd say, my people, Pablo needs 100 people who are willing to come and kill for Pablo, who are willing to die for Pablo. And the sad thing is you might have 400, these young people. We're talking 13 to maybe 21 years old.
Wow.
Uh,
So at least he wasn't mincing words. He wasn't doing the old switcheroo. He was telling them straight up, I need you to kill some people.
Yep. And so instead of being, a lot of people say he's a Robin Hood type personality.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, he's a master manipulator because he went and manipulated all those people.
Yeah.
There was one guy that Javier helped the Colombian National Police arrest. This kid was 15 years old. He was on a dance floor. They went in and got him, had to fight him, had a gun in his waistband, got him back to the police station. They're talking to him, and he opens up and he said, I work for Pablo. He said, my life is dedicated to killing for Pablo and dying for Pablo. He said, I won't live to be past, I'm 15. I'll be lucky if I make it to 20, 21 years old. And he said, right now, Pablo's offering $100 for every police officer we killed. He said, I've already killed 10 cops myself, 15 years old. And Javier asked him, said, well, what do you do? How do you do that? And he said, you just find a uniformed cop out on the street and you wait till he's got his back turned and walk up and right in the back of the head. He said, I've killed as many as 3 in one day. There's an address we go to. I get $300. I get $100. And so Javier asked him, he said, what do you do with the money? And he said, most of it goes to my mom because she's living in one of Pablo's apartments. He said, "I want enough money for beer and new tennis shoes, and other than that," he said, "that's my life."
Damn.
Just so he manipulated these young people into they have no future. They know they're gonna die. Mm.
Damn. Reminds me of the kids in Africa you see, like, shooting the AK-47s. They're, like, 7 years old, that type of thing.
Yeah, Boko Haram and all those terroristic groups over there, unbelievable.
That is scary, man. Yeah, so that I mean, he's, smart what he was doing. He was building that buffer around him, and, I mean, the government had to be afraid of him. If he had that much wielding that much power and influence.
They were. I mean, he was threatening everybody. He would offer payoffs to start with, and if that didn't work, then I mean, there's a documented instance where, in Colombia, a magistrate is the head of a criminal investigation, okay? So they're investigating Pablo for whatever crime it is, and he has a couple of his sicarios go in and meet the judge, and they just kinda force their way in the office, and the judge is trying to, "Get the hell out of my office," and they say, "Sir, let us talk to you first. We represent Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar is asking that you dismiss the charges on him, and in exchange, here's $50,000 cash, US cash." The judge is like, "Get the hell out of my office, this it's outrageous that you would consider this," and all this stuff, and well, they're "Just before we go, can we show you some pictures?" And they pull out a big manila envelope, and they pull out a picture of the judge's wife and children coming out of their house, a
Ugh.
picture of of his mother and father coming out of their house or coming out of church or wherever, maybe a picture of their kids at school. It's like, "This could be bad for you. Please accept the money." The judge kicked them out, did the right thing in our opinion. That would be the right thing for
Right.
us to do. The next day, they killed the guy's whole family, killed his parents, and killed his dog, and then killed him.
Oh, yeah, what do you do with that moral dilemma, you know?
Exactly, exactly, and so it's easy, to sit back and judge people for the decisions they make, but when you put yourself in someone else's shoes and that's your family, what would you do?
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta I don't even know if you could make it out of town because 'cause they're probably watching you.
Probably, probably.
Yeah, once that type of stuff start is allowed to happen, then, the gloves are off, and there's no legal system left to punish him. I mean,
He
it's nuts.
would So we had this thing called the search block, and this is there was one before he surrendered to his custom built prison, and then after he escaped, the search block version 2 came out, and the head was a Colombian police officer, Colonel Hugo Martinez, who is a true Colombian hero. I mean, this was our boss in Medellin when Javi and I lived up there for 18 months. I'm just the utmost respect for this man. Pablo and the colonel hated each other, and, I mean, Pablo knew we were listening to his phones. He'd pick up the phone and we'd record it. We being the Colombian National Police, because we didn't have any jurisdiction down there. We're just supporting everything. But he's on there, "Colonel Martinez, I'm gonna come and kill you. I'm gonna blow up the apartment building where your family lives. Your whole family is gonna be wiped out. There'll be no history of the Martinez family." I mean, just unbelievable threats. And then the apartment complex where the colonel and his wife lived in Bogota, all the other apartment people put a petition together and asked the Martinezes to move because they were afraid that Pablo would blow up their building.
Yeah.
So during the second manhunt, he actually had to move his family into the police base where we were living up in Medellin to protect them.
Yeah, that's where I'd want him. I mean, geez,
Yeah.
how could you even work knowing that your family's home could be blown up? That guy's got balls of steel.
He's passed on now. He made it up to general in the Colombian National Police, and that's, one thing I like that Javier and I, we always try to point out in every presentation we do, every podcast interview we do, whatever it is true who the true heroes are of that entire investigation, and it's not us. We just got a lot of credit for some of the things we didn't do. A lot of it's just made up Hollywood stuff. But the true heroes are the Colombian National Police because they took their country back from that piece of crap down there.
Yeah, they have to live there. They have skin in the game. Their family's there. I mean, how the hell are you allowed to build your own prison? That sounds so unreal that, like, if you wrote that in a story, it would be too unreal to put in. Be like, no one will ever believe that they let a criminal build his own prison. I mean, it sounds stupid, you know? How did that happen?
Well, the attorney general, so in Colombia, here in the United States, the president is elected, then he appoints his own attorney general. In Colombia, the attorney general is elected by the public, so he's autonomous from the president. I mean, you hopefully get along, and have continuity there. But the attorney general at that time was Gustavo de Grief, and de Grief came up with this idea for a self-surrender plan. And the way that would work is you come in and plead guilty to any felony that you choose. We're gonna put you in, plead guilty. You're gonna go to prison for a few years, and then you'll be absolved of every other crime that you've ever committed in your life, including murders. So Pablo sends a couple of his henchmen in. They test it, because he's not going to go in and test it, and it works. So he calls DeGrief one day and says, "Hey, Mr. Attorney General, I want to take advantage of the self surrender program." And Gustav's, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Escobar. Thank you so much. This is going to be so good for our country." And blah blah blah. And Pablo says, "Well, wait a minute. I got some stipulations to go along with this. First, I'm going to build my own prison, but you know what? I'm going to pay for it because I don't want the citizens of Colombia to have to bear that tax burden." So they said, "Okay."
What a guy.
He said, "Well, the guards that are gonna be at that prison, I'm gonna hire them because I need people that are loyal to me because the police and the military and those gringos, they're gonna try and come and get me, so but I'm gonna pay their salaries too, so again, you don't have to worry about the tax burden." They say, "Okay." He says, "Well, listen, I'm gonna handpick my fellow prisoners because 'cause there's gotta be people loyal to me, and there's only gonna be 14 of us counting me, including my brother, who's an idiot." And Gustavo says, "Okay." He said, "Well, listen, the good guys we were just talking about, they are not allowed to come within 2 miles of the perimeter of the prison because I know they're gonna try and come and kidnap me." And believe me, we would really like to have done that. And Gustavo says, "Okay." And he says, "Oh, listen, I'm only gonna do 5 years." Okay? I said, "Okay." "And my assets, you don't get those, I get to keep them." What do you think Gustavo said? "Okay."
Oh my gosh.
It's the worst plea deal in the history of law enforcement, you know? But here's the thing, Steve. When Pablo went to prison for that 1 year that he was in there before he escaped, the car bombs did stop. The violence did dissipate throughout Colombia. So, I mean, if you're the president of Colombia and you ran on a platform that we're gonna stop the narcotics traffickers and the violence, what do you do? What do you
Right.
say to that? Of
Yeah.
course,
And by escape, you mean just walked out the front door and got in a car and left?
well, it was a back door, but yeah, pretty much.
The guard was one of his henchmen, just opened the door. See you later.
Well, they were in a gun battle with the Colombian military, so that gave him an opportunity. He actually did. Him and some, I think, 4 or 5 guys walked out the back of the prison, and we just got pictures here in the last few months from a photographer who, at that time, instead of going to the gate, the front of the prison, went around back, and he encountered Pablo and them, and we now have this photographs in our presentations that we do around the world, and it's Pablo actually escaping from the prison.
Wow. That's incredible. So from there, so obviously he had already made up his mind he was going to do as little time as possible and then leave, probably, we're thinking.
He got sentenced to 5 years. This is a guy who we attributed 15,000 murders to. One of his henchmen, one of his fellow inmates, a guy who's dead now, John Jairo Vasquez Velasquez, everybody knows him as Popeye. He had a YouTube channel, he had a book, I mean, he had a Netflix show. I think he was doing better on the speaking circuit than we were doing. He says, those gringos say 15,000. He said the number's more like 50,000 people that Pablo's responsible for murdering. And
Wow.
he was absolved of all those murders. So if he'd have done his 5 years and he comes out and he's got $30 billion, there's a dedicated family man. That's another myth that's out there because we all know that's not what he didn't choose his family.
Yeah. I mean, you always thinking, like, when I see these situations, like, if that had been me, like, all right, you get this, like, wild deal to reset your life. Why not just leave and, like, retire? Be like, all right, give the blessing to some other one of your top henchmen, be like, leave me out of it. I'm going, I'm going here to retire. Leave me alone. Couldn't
Well,
couldn't do it.
even his prison was a joke. He had a 2-room suite. He had his own private bathroom. All the prisoners had private bathrooms. He had walk-in closets. He had a safe and hidden safe inside of his closet. Had a fireplace. All the accoutrements, side by side refrigerator, freezer, full size microwave oven. It was just amazing the stuff that he had in there. Then they had a bar, an actual nightclub built in the prison for Pablo and his invited guests.
Oh, you could
In the
bring
back,
people in, of course.
oh yeah, in the back of the prison, there's just this big gaping hole. It's not even a fence. It's just a big gaping hole. And so if Pablo, wanted to go to a new restaurant that had opened up or wanted to go watch a soccer game or wanted to go shopping or wanted to go spend a long weekend with his family down at the Monaco building where they lived. He just came and went as he pleased. Nobody's gonna stop him. They would go into restaurants. I mean, you're talking five-star restaurants. Columbia has some fantastic food down there.
Yeah.
They would go in with his sicarios, and the first thing they'd do is lock the door and go around and collect everybody's cell phone in there, so nobody could call and say, "Hey, Pablo Escobar's in here." Then he would address everybody. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Pablo Escobar. Please enjoy your evening, dinner, drinks. Everything's on me tonight. You just can't leave. Once I'm gone, then you can leave and you'll get your phones back." So what are you gonna do?
Oh my gosh. Hopefully he's just starting your meal.
Yeah, you're gonna be there for a while, right?
Damn, that's
The
that's
things that he was
unreal.
doing was just outrageous.
That's unreal. How do you so when he escapes, what was, were you guys there at the time already, or did you get called back?
Well, we were back in Bogota, and we would go to Medellin and meet with the cops, but they were usually day trips. So we'd go up in the morning, then fly back in the afternoon. That night, the day that Pablo escaped, that night, the head of the Colombian National Police called our boss and called the ambassador and said, "Hey, we're reconvening the search block, and this is a 600-man force whose sole responsibility is track down Pablo Escobar and capture or kill him. And we would like for you guys to send Pena and Murphy up here with us." And so, the next morning, Javier and I show up at the embassy, and our boss calls us in and says, "Go get your bag. You're going to Medellin." And we did. We were excited that he had escaped because it meant we got another shot to get him. So, we run back home, get our bags packed, come back. We get on the DEA airplane, fly up to Medellin. And for the next 18 months, we lived in Medellin with the Colombian National Police, going out on operations, talking to informants, making payoffs, informant payments. We had set up a 1-800 tip line in which the State Department was offering a $5 million reward for information leading to the capture or death of Pablo Escobar. Um, as exciting as life was in Miami as a DEA agent, it grew exponentially living on that base for 18 months. You're going out every day on Huey gunships, not every day, but regularly, running raids. You might come in with 5 helos, 6 helos. You might have a Black Hawk helicopter with the miniguns flying top cover for you while you're hitting the ground.
Wow.
Sometimes they take you and drop you off on these mountaintops, and you might have a 60-man patrol, and you spend all day humping the mountains looking for anything related to Pablo, hideouts, cocaine labs, whatever you might find. It was
Damn.
just, you know, as an old man, I'm thinking, what the hell was I thinking back then? But as a young man, I couldn't. There were nights that you'd be back at the base, and you come back, you're dog tired. You've been out in the mountains for 8 or 10 hours, and you have dinner, which was always you had potatoes and rice, and every once in a while you got a little piece of chicken to go with it. That was your meal 3 times a day at the base. And so, but they did have some good cold beer. So, the
There you go.
evenings were out in the backfield, and you're looking across the valley because Medellin's built in this valley, like a bowl almost. And across the way is Barrio Pablo Escobar. And at nighttime with the white lights twinkling, it was one of the it's just a beautiful sight to look at. And you're having a little cold drink there and looking across the way there. And there, as the crow flies, it's 2 or 3 miles, but the drive there is going to take you an hour.
Oh, wow.
You're thinking, man, there's nobody else in DEA doing what we're doing.
It's
And
incredible.
every other agent DEA would just in a heartbeat would change places with you to be there doing that.
Yeah. What kind of beer? You remember?
It was Aguila and what was the little brown cans? Club Columbia. That was it.
Nice.
We would say Club Columbia, but in Spanish, Club
Can you
Columbia.
can you get it here? Do you ever drink one and reminisce?
I stopped drinking over 20 years ago, so
Good for you. That's probably the best thing anyways.
I saved a lot of money.
I'm getting there myself. I'm 45 now, and I love beer, but every year that goes by, it makes me feel less good. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Steve, when you go out with your buddies, when your turn comes to buy, they still expect you to buy a round. They don't give a damn if you're going to beer or not.
That's true. So did you find is Colombia just generally pretty unsafe, the country? Because my uncle was, when I was a kid in the 80s, he worked for Raytheon government. I mean, him and my aunt got sent down there, and they traveled to Japan. They went to Japan. They were in Colombia for a time because he worked He literally would never tell us exactly what he did, but he worked on imaging and tracking systems, weapons, I'm sure. So, but he said when he was in Colombia, my aunt hated it. They were in a house, kind of in the mountains, armed guards when he wasn't there, and they brought him back and forth to where he was working with a Jeep with armed people. So it just sounds, I mean, maybe he was like a kidnapping threat or something because he was an engineer.
Exactly.
Pretty unsafe.
Yeah, it was. It's if you look at the history of Colombia, there's actually a period of their history referred to as La Violencia, the violent time, and that's when these small towns, these mountain towns, these gangs of men would break into your house and kill all the men in the house with machetes.
Oh.
You know, Pablo, even in his book, he recalls things like that. His brother's book, it was. And they have the dubious distinction of having the second longest running civil war in the history of the world. It's over 60 years now. You've got all those drug factions down there, all the different groups that it's not as the cartels are not as big as they used to be, like the Medellin cartel, the Cali cartel, the North Valley cartel, but still the leading country for the production of cocaine in the world right now.
Yeah.
So it's an extremely violent place. You had the insurgent factions like FARC and M19 and ELN and AUC and all the different groups that the CIA was investigating. I mean, some of those guys were informants, you know, so they knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yes, it is extremely violent. Now, it's much nicer now than it was back during that time. But like my oldest son is a physician in Atlanta. He and his wife were gonna go to Mexico a few years ago, and I said, "Don't go to Mexico, please don't."
Yeah.
So they said, "Well, where do you think we ought to go?" And I said, "Colombia," and then my son about fell out of his chair. "I can't believe you'd say that, Dad." But they went to Cartagena and the Rosario Islands and fell in love with the place. Then a couple years ago, our oldest daughter and her boyfriend and some other couples went down to Medellin and Cartagena. Just beautiful. It's a beautiful country. The food's great. The people are nice. The cities, it's just like here in the United States. There's parts of the cities that we know we don't go to because they're dangerous, right?
Right.
Same thing in Colombia. You go to the big cities, you just stay out of the bad parts of town.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the important part.
this
Listen to the people at the resort. Don't leave
Yeah.
or only go where they tell you. But that happened when I was a kid. The lieutenant at my dad's police department, his sister went to Jamaica and I guess wandered off of where she shouldn't have been on the beach, got hacked to death by a machete.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, insane. But, she left the area or she went to where you weren't supposed to go.
Yep. Yep. So just this year alone, Javier and I we never announced when we're going down there, but we've already been to Cartagena twice this year with different groups for speaking events. So they're never open to the public, and it's usually American audiences when we do that. But I mean, I encourage people to go down there. It's beautiful. It really is.
I bet it is. Man, when you go down there, do you ever have in the back of your mind, like there might be some Escobar family member or some kind of target on your head or you know what I mean? Anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is in the back of your head. I don't dwell on it, but I mean, I still get hate mail on social media. You know, people want to chop off my head and crap down my throat, and they hope my kids develop cancer and die slow
Oh my God.
death. And I know it. The people that send that, I'm sure they weren't even alive when Pablo was in his power.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like the
and they
kids wearing the Che
do it for
Guevara
respect.
t-shirts.
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
that was Pablo's mentor. That was his little hero was Che Guevara.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had we briefly talked about, before that we started recording about, Boston George. Yeah, because crazy, George Young, he, I worked for a small police department on the Cape called Eastham PD, and one winter, with my sergeant, started going through the evidence room, just doing maintenance, and there was a box in there labeled George Young, and I go, "This isn't like Boston George from Below," and he goes, "Actually, it is." I go, "You're kidding." He goes, "Yeah, he had a house in Eastham," and he goes, "You don't know this story?" I'm like, "Not really." So he explains to me, a guy I was currently working with who's a year or two older than me, Danny Deschamps, his father, Win Deschamps, went undercover as a small town cop to do the raid they did in Eastham of George Young's property, and he's in Blow. He actually says it in the end, it was a small town policeman that really caused me the most trouble. His name was Win Deschamps. I'm like, you got this blowing my mind. This is February on Cape Cod. No one's around. And I'm reading these all the reports were in there, reading these old reports about Danny's dad going undercover for years. Said Danny said it ruined his dad's life. He ended up getting divorced because he just was obsessed with getting Boston George. But they went undercover to the beach to George's wife and made friends with her. And they were very hospitable people. So when they found her at the beach again, he was there and he befriended them. He wanted to be friends with local people. He was kind of a loudmouth. They said he'd hang out at the East Ham Superette and it's kind of like big shotting in the small town. He was just his personality. So they became friends with him and he would tell him stuff like, he's like, I can't stay, guys. I gotta go back to California. Carlos Santana's at my house. He's doing he's done half of my blow. He has tons of people over there. He would tell these wild stories like that, but, you recently, you actually had him on your podcast.
We did. When we first started this podcast, Game of Crimes, and I'm looking at our list here, our first episode came out June 28th of 2021. And that's when I had a co-host. And so my co-host, Morgan Wright, actually interviewed Javier and I. We were the first guest on my podcast.
Yeah.
Our second guest was George Young the following week.
Good way to start.
Well, this was during COVID and we probably had 15 recordings done before we ever actually went live with the podcast. But yeah, George was, he's got that distinctive voice, that gravelly growl voice.
Yep.
But when you talk to him, it was his last interview. He passed away just several weeks after our interview with him. And he admitted to some things that we had never heard before. He told us about how Noriega down in Panama had nationalized his bank account and lost $64 million. Talked about actually working for the CIA down there, doing some things for them. He's never talked about that before. And we talked to him about when he went to Norman's Key down in the Bahamas, he was going to kill Carlos later because Carlos had cut him out of the deals and cost him a lot of money. But when the time came, he said, I just didn't have the heart to pull the trigger on him.
Fascinating. I got to go back. I got to listen to that one. Well, actually, I'll put a link in my show notes to your podcast so people can check it out.
Thank you.
Steve, can you put a I start expressions, Steve, and my mind can't process or put a bow on, such an idiot. Put a bow on the Escobar thing, the culmination of the whole bust.
Yeah, so we all know that Pablo was killed on December 2nd, 1993. If you've seen the Narco series, it shows that I was on the roof there. I was not. I was back at the base with Colonel Martinez. I was in his office listening to the operation go down with him and his executive staff, and we're loading up our 600-man force to go out and back these guys up. We, for 18 months, had representatives of the U.S. Army's Delta Force and the U.S. Navy's SEAL Team 6, what we call Develop Group now, working with us. Studs of the world. I'm still in contact with some of those guys even to this day and just have the utmost respect. But they were not allowed to go out and do their jobs. So the politics,
Yep.
And so Pablo was taken down that day and he got in a shootout with the Colombian National Police and he lost. That's just the basic end of Pablo Escobar. That's what happened. But what I really like about it, and some people know this and some people don't, in the show, it shows that my wife and I adopted a little girl in Colombia. And I think her name in the show is Olivia. And the circumstances they show is not at all what happened. It's Hollywood. But my wife and I actually adopted 2 little girls down there. One is from Bogota. Monica is 8 months old when we got her. She's now 31. And then just before we left Colombia in 1994, we adopted our second daughter, Mandy, who is also 31 now. She was 5 months old.
Wow, God bless you guys. That's great.
Yeah, so I had hair till I had daughters, and then the hair band. Boy, I tell you, they were tough.
I got a daughter. I get it.
Yeah. Well, we got 5 granddaughters now, so I'm going to be completely bald here in another few weeks, probably. But it's so of all the death and destruction and horrendous events that we saw down there, we saw the aftermaths of car bombs, of seeing body parts laying around, of seeing infants and toddlers who were killed in a car bomb simply because their mom was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Ugh.
Of all the things that we saw down there, it all ended up with the best part of our lives. My wife and I, Connie and I, we've been married almost 41 years now. And if we had never gone to Colombia, we would have never adopted our daughters. And I have 2 biological sons from my practice wife, and they're older, but, they have accepted the 4 kids have accepted each other as, they treat each other like brothers and sisters.
Beautiful.
So of all that, all the mayhem and destruction and chaos and anarchy and all the things that we witnessed down there firsthand, it's the bow on this whole thing is my daughters. I mean, I just couldn't be prouder of them. And when we do our shows, I even show a picture of them when Javi and I are holding them when they were both babies, and then we've got a picture. We spoke at the Lincoln Theater up in Washington D.C. a few years ago. And was able to get a picture of them as adults.
That's awesome.
Just couldn't be prouder of them. My kids are fantastic.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, hey, I was going to ask you about a heartwarming situation from your career. I think we nailed it.
That's
And
it. That's the biggest thing. My wife and I are just proud to death of them. Just like
That's
any parent
awesome.
would be.
I love that, Steve. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Um, can you give just a popular question with the show? A lot of people are in backgrounds or thinking about becoming police officers or federal agents. What words of wisdom would you give to these people that think about getting into the profession?
There's no more honorable profession, in my opinion, than law enforcement or being a public servant. And a lot of people hear that title, public servant, they think that's a derogatory term. I don't. That's a heroic term. That men and women are brave enough to put a uniform on to go out and protect us, not even knowing us, knowing that a lot of people that they're protecting hate them. You hear all this defund the police crap that's going around. That's whoever supports that's stupid. I mean, you're
Yeah.
just out and out stupid. You want to do something like that? Go move in another country where they don't have law and order, where they don't have the rule of law.
Yeah, and get a little
Back
faith.
to what you think. Exactly. Sorry to go off on a tangent there. It just really ticked
Oh.
me off.
I like it.
But you will have the adventure of your life. Let me tell you, it's not a 9 to 5. It's not Monday through Friday. It becomes a lifestyle. And it's whoever you're married to has to be willing to accept that. I mean, here I am talking to you, Steve, and my little office here at home, and I'm looking out the window, and my wife's out there trimming the bushes. So we might have to talk a little bit longer till she's done. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But you want a life of adventure? This is it. Do you run into guys, Steve, that say, they find out you're a cop, they say, "Oh, I always wanted to be a cop."
Oh, all the time.
And my question to them is, well, why didn't you? And we
Yep.
know why they didn't. Either they're making too much money, their wife won't let them, or they don't have the balls to do it. And I'm not a brave person. I'm not a tough guy. Back during that time, the good Lord had given me abilities to deal with fear. And, people say, weren't you scared? Darn right I was scared.
Yeah.
You let somebody shoot at you and see if you're not scared. You know what I'm talking about. So, but I had the ability to deal with that fear by continuing to think logically, because somebody shooting at you, your first reaction is run. Well, if you run, you're giving up your cover.
Right.
You're gonna get shot in the back. So I know that's a little bit of a tangent. I just tell me a job that's more important than this, where you're serving everybody else. A lot of people say, and I really try to bring this out on my show with the guests, with law enforcement guests. A lot of people say, well, cops just the only reason they became cops because they want to kill people. Have you ever met a police officer in your life that said, I joined the police department to kill somebody?
Right. Never.
I was a cop for 38 years. I haven't met the first one yet.
Yeah. So the last thing you want to do is can screw you up too,
Oh, you're not kidding. Talk about liability nowadays. So, but if you're looking for an honorable profession, somewhere where you help other people, this is it. Not every call is going to be glamorous. A lot of it's going to be gory. You go to wrecks where people are decapitated and their innards have come out.
Yep.
You see the depravity of man, of how evil people can be to other people. So, my advice is, as a Christian, pray about it before you decide to make that life-altering decision, because it's not for everybody.
Absolutely.
What you get in, the brotherhood and the sisterhood of law enforcement, is unlike anything you'll ever experience anywhere else. I'm thinking probably the closest thing would be military. And even with them, it's very similar because I've gotten involved with a lot of military groups supporting them now, and you see that brotherhood, and once they realize that, what it is you're after, they accept you right in also. Because I'm not after anything. If I can help them, I'll help them. Otherwise we're just friends. So that's
Absolutely.
my advice for what it's worth. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. It's going to be exciting.
Words of wisdom. Thank you, Steve. That's great. Yeah, it's funny. I have friends that have high paying jobs and all that, and they still respect the crap out of the police job because every little boy ran around,
Yeah.
wanted to be a copper, and then life happens or whatever. But it is one of those jobs. It's an ancient profession, and it's so needed. And people that think right really respect it. They really respect that you're doing it.
Right. If you're coming into this, or if you're considering coming into the profession for any reason other than trying to help other people, move on. We've got enough slugs already. We've got enough bad people in here that make us look bad. And one of the sayings that I try to say as often as I can is nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
Right. 100% true. Steve, so you got a fair amount going on here. This is just a few things. But the podcast Game of Crimes, that's available all across anywhere you can get it, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I'm sure iHeartRadio, everywhere else. And that's just you're the sole host of that right now?
Yep. That's Murph and my wife has started editing for me, Connie. So she's the
God bless her.
she's fantastic at it too. So
Oh, I'm jealous. No one's editing
it,
for me.
yeah, I tell you what, I couldn't catch my breath between that and Javi and I still we have our worldwide speaking business. So when we go on
Yeah.
a trip, if it's here in the U.S., you're usually gone 3 days, and if it's international, you might be gone 3 weeks. So there's a lot going on. We're actually working on 2 potential television projects. I can't say more about that yet,
Very
just
cool.
because we're not there yet. But I don't see things slowing down. I love it. I love the podcast. I love the speaking business. I love the other things we get to do. Um, Come and check us out.
Awesome, man. You definitely got the personality for it. I would love to be at one of your talks. But they're funny as hell.
Well, we always advise people to bring a pillow with you because we've heard ourselves talk and we don't think we're that good. But
In the book Manhunters, how we took down Pablo Escobar, I put your website here. Do you want me to point people to your website or do you want an Amazon link in there?
website's better, and here's the difference. If you order the books through the website, I'll be the one shipping them to you. I have I don't know if you can see me behind me here, but there's a whole wall of books, and there's several cases out in the garage. Javier and I have already autographed them, and when you order through our website or eBay, you can include a little personal message that I'll write in there to you also.
Nice.
Honestly, I'll be honest with you, you can get them cheaper on Amazon, but they're not going to be autographed.
Yeah, autographs. Totally worth it. That's awesome, man. Steve, it was an absolute honor to have you on the show, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Steve, thank you so much for having me and putting up with my sporadic schedule here because we did have to reschedule a couple times, and I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you for your service to your community. You got out of it once and realized you couldn't stay away from it and came back to it. That's the way it is. It's the
Yep.
way, once it's in your blood, it's there. But thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely my honor. And I'm going to do the outro. Can you hang on for just like 2 minutes?
Sure.
Awesome. The great Steve Murphy, guys. What a fun interview. So interesting. Had no idea the guy did all those years as a copper before he went federal. So fun. Thank you for that, Steve. Truly appreciate it. This is a time in the show when I thank the Patreon sponsors, lieutenant sergeants and patrolmen alike. If you love the show and you listen to all the episodes and you just want to show me that love through some money, I like that. That's great. But the link is in the show notes. But rest assured, the show will remain free, the 4 episodes a month, so that everybody can hear what the men and women of law enforcement do on a daily basis and get a better appreciation for them. They deserve it. So let me start with the Patreon lieutenants, everybody. I'm talking about the great and powerful Andy Biggs, the great Kyle Roberts, everybody. Michael Roach from Roach Machines. Thank you, sir. Check them out. The great and powerful Thomas Connell, everybody. Now to the sergeants. Adam Alexander, Adam McMahon, Adam Mihal, Ben Peters, Bentley Barnett, Brad Thompson, Brett Lee. Thank you, sir. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, amazing woodworker. Check him out on Instagram. Sherry Finch, thank you. Madam Clark LaCuff, everybody. Dave Ellman, Dennis Carrasquillo, thank you, sir. Doug and Kelly Newman, love you guys. Hope you're enjoying Wyoming. Dylan Mosher, everybody. Elliot Sykes, Gabriel Decknop, thank you. The great Gary Steiner, everybody. George Cariotis, thank you. Greg Gaboy, everybody. Greg, my man. The great Jackson Dalton from Black Box Safety. Check them out. Past sponsor, James Rose. Awesome music. James Rose. The great Jason Labrie, Jason Lau, Jessica King, everybody. Thank you, Jessica. John Jordan, everybody. John Shoemaker. You are the man. John and Erin Kate, love you guys. I'll see you at church. Lauren Stimson, the handsome. Lane Campbell. Lisa Gano, holding it down to dispatch. Thank you, Lisa. The great Marcus Johansson. Thank you, sir. Iceman Motor Cop Chronicles. Check out his podcast. Thank you, Iceman. Nancy Hammond. Nick Adams. Paul Maloney. Thank you. The great Raymond Arsenault. Richard Tolles. Keep on trucking, brother. Stay safe out there. Sasha McNabb, everybody. Sam Conway. I can't believe it. Scott Young. Sean Clifford. Seth Wright. Sheriff Ronald Long. Thank you, Sheriff. Tammy Walsh. Holding down dispatch. Thank you, Tammy. The great Tony Fahey. Zachary Pleat. And the handsome George Testier. Love you, buddy. See you at church. Woo! The list is getting long, guys, and I love it, and I truly appreciate you in supporting the show. I will see you guys next week.